Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody out there in YouTube land. Reading We Interrupt This Program, section titled Impending, Part 1. Thank you, Eddie, John said. I'll be by to get them and part of the feed about dark on Christmas Eve. The man in the overalls and heavy brown coat shook his head and grinned. It's the kind of thing my dad would have done when I was their age, but you sure your girls will go for this? Seems like today's kids would rather flip burgers at the mall or something than do any sort of real work on the land. John shrugged. Don't know for sure, but we've always raised a couple of feeder pigs every year, and Mel helped me a lot with them this year. So it's not like it'll be a completely new experience for her. The girls do the milking every day, and Mel's been the one doing most of the work with feeding the hens and egg gathering for the last couple of years, so they should do okay handling pigs with me to advise them. Come spring, when your birds start to lay, I'll pick up the geese. Never fooled with them before, but if the girls raise them from day-old goslings, we shouldn't have too much trouble with them before. But if the girls, we shouldn't have too much trouble. If locally produced food becomes as popular as I think it will, they'll likely sell all they can raise, and geese will feed themselves out of a pasture more than anything but a cow. If it doesn't work out, we're not out much, and we simply can eat them ourselves. If it does work, they'll make a little money, and it'll be something they'll have done for themselves. Don't think you can give a better lesson in self-reliance and work ethic than that. Well, I wish you luck then. Sure wish I could get my grandkids interested. Not that I expect them to take up farming, but they don't seem to want to do anything productive. Just sit on their butts all day in front of the TV. The old man and John shook hands, and John went on down the road to market looking for other possibilities. Except for the inspiration of giving the girls their own stock to raise and sell, he hated Christmas shopping. Didn't like Christmas in general, for that matter. As he did every year when he shopped for gifts, he wondered why he held such antipathy for a day that most others truly looked forward to, and as always failed to come up with an answer that really satisfied him. Whatever the reason, he just didn't like it, and that was that. If it weren't for the girls, he'd not bother with it at all, but he fought and lost that battle with Anne long ago and had no taste for hashing it out again. Humbug, he said passionately as he strolled along looking at the tables. Several people nearby smiled when they heard him. After another hour had passed, he'd found several more gifts that he thought would serve, and that he wouldn't feel too bad about giving. He was trying to find as much as he could at the Archer market because one could trade here rather than spending cash money. Anne's salary only went so far, and with the dollar devaluation coming next month, they were being as frugal as they could with what they had because no one was sure what the future would hold. Prices in paper dollars were steep, but many folks were willing to make reasonable trades if you had any kind of decent trade goods. He'd worked out the deal for the dozen goslings, 2 young sows, the services of one of Eddie's boars, and 2 feeder pigs for 6 bricks of Winchester 22 cartridges and 3 boxes of number 6 shotgun shells for a 12 gauge. Ammunition was one commodity that simply had not come back onto the civilian market, and no one knew when, if ever, it would reappear, so it was extremely valuable as a trade item in its own right. It was also an item that John was slow to offer for that very reason, no matter that he had a healthy supply remaining. The dense gray cloud cover had been steadily lowering all morning and was now beginning to drop a cold, misty rain on the earth beneath. The chilly precipitation caused him to feel even more morose than he'd been before, so he decided that he'd exhausted the possibilities of the market and went to his truck. He felt guilty looking at it. He really should have hooked up one of the bike traders and ridden it in. But more than a few miles of pedaling made his knee ache for hours. He didn't know how much of a load he might end up with to carry home, so he decided against riding Cricket into town, which left the truck. It only cost a little over a half gallon of gas in and back, but come January he'd be losing his fuel ration, paid by the sheriff's department as a sector deputy program went into mothballs. He could apply for his own ration card, but even with one, gas was $7 a gallon on the open market when it was available and rising. He got in, shut the door, and started the motor. Well, he grumbled out loud to himself, it's Christmas. It's not like I hardly go anywhere anymore. Ann, Lisa, or Luke bring me out most anything I need from town. Going into Archer is beginning to feel like I'm really stepping out. He turned the truck around and headed toward US 27, towards the county road. As he approached the intersection, he saw the lights in McGill's store. Looked warm and inviting. It must be the cold and gray that's getting to me. Probably should have let Ann put in those special bulbs last year like she wanted. Without really thinking about it, he pulled into the small parking lot, got out and walked up to the door. He stepped through the scented warmth of the interior, smelling of coffee and Carolita Alvarez's cooking. She was spooning food onto a plate for McGill's lunch. The shopkeeper looked up and said, "Buenos tardes, John. Sit down and have lunch with us. There's plenty." John looked at his watch and decided he would, so he told Ann he might be late getting back from the market so they wouldn't be waiting lunch on him. "Thanks, Miguel. Reckon I will. You were very fortunate that you married such an excellent cook. Is that Carolita's chicken and yellow rice?" The woman smiled and said, "Yes, it is. I remember how much you like it. Come and sit with us. We haven't seen much of you lately. Are you ready for this front coming in? The weatherman says it will turn into freezing sleet by this afternoon." John sighed. "Yeah, we're as ready as we can be, I suppose. The stock will come in on their own, and I've got a big stack of wood on the porch. I expect to probably lose power again like we've done the last 2 times. I hate ice storms. I'd rather have 10 degrees and snow up to my behind than an ice storm at 30. All right.